If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello listeners, and welcome to this third and final part in this week's mini-series. If you'd like early access to full-length ad-free episodes, you can find me at patreon.com/the Cult Vault. But for now, and thank you so much to Gael. That type of tragedy, I imagine, could have one of two long-standing impacts on your uncle in terms of either confirming everything that he'd said about going against him in the first place, or him blaming himself because he was the one who was having an affair, being tempted by the flesh.
Yes, and that's a good point, because what I want to tell you now is this is how the secret got out. So in the days leading up to the funeral, my dad started to act strange, and I couldn't understand why. And on the day of the funeral, Dad refused to go. And I said, "What's up, Dad? Should be there." He said, "No, I can't go." And as it came out later, apparently my uncle, who was full of guilt, he believed God had punished him, he actually wrote a letter to my father, didn't face him up face to face. It was a letter written down of all the sins he'd committed with my mother. And at the bottom of it, he said, "You must forgive me." Now you can imagine my poor father, because he always suspected there was something going on, which was always denied. It broke him. But there was a conversation that was had between Dad and my aunt, Dad's sister-in-law, that they would keep it secret. They would not disclose it to anyone, that they made a pact that they would push it under the carpet. No one should know.
I suppose at that point they are realizing the potential for half brothers and sisters and the implications of really talking through with the children that this infidelity had been taking place.
Yes, and it only came to light to the other family back in 2005 when I met up with them and said, "This is what happened," and it was shock. They didn't know. We lived with the knowledge for years, but they had no idea. And so my auntie was very successful in keeping it secret. But as Dad got older, it really got to him and he needed to get it out. He was suffering enormously and he needed to talk to someone about it, because he felt, not only felt left out, put down and let down by his brother, but his own wife. It broke him and he never really overcame it.
Those two sisters as well, they were on their way out. They were on their way.
Yeah, to live a wonderful life. My cousin I had just turned 21. She was turning 21 in the early December, and she had family back in Victoria who'd left the cult years before. They were going to throw her a huge 21st birthday party. She never arrived. It's just absolutely tragic. And we lived in this, we were led to believe that we were safe and secure as long as we stayed and supported him within this bubble of the cult. And I grew up believing that. My bubble burst that day when was killed. And it was a huge reality check for me. And I just realised, no, I'm not safe. You know, he can't protect us, which he sort of tried to instill in us because he put so much fear into us, the fear of hell and death. But at the same time, you do what I say and you'll be safe and secure. And we all believed it. So the whole bubble burst. And so we then decided that we would sell up and move back to the eastern states, but not to Victoria. We moved to Queensland.
And that was in 1979?
Yes, that was in 1979.
So this is 6 years before the Doomsday Prophecy is supposed to unfold, before the end of the world is supposed to take place. 1984. What an interesting year for that prophecy to supposed to take place, isn't it? Especially considering that he'd had that prophecy many years before. When you move back to Queensland, is it all of you moving back together, or is it your individual family moving back without your uncle?
All of us were still within the cult. The cult had reduced to probably 10 members or so, 9 or 10 members. We were very, very small. I was completely lost at this stage. And, you know, I just thought, there's no way out for me. I can't get out. I have no life. I've lost my cousin, who I was quite close to. It took me years, I think, I was in such a state of shock. I showed no emotion at all whatsoever when just fear and anxiety, but no sadness, no sense of loss. It hit me like a ton of bricks, maybe 15 months later, that the reality was that she had gone, she had passed. So we set up our own little church here in Brisbane and we hired another hall, but it never took off. My uncle started to become increasingly unwell. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and then dementia. And, you know, the mantle was supposed to fall onto my brother. But my brother and I, this is amazing how circumstances come your way to give you that out. So we were so heavily indoctrinated. We had no friends, no one that I could lean into. But just by chance, a young couple came into, and it was a house meeting, came into one of our house meetings, which was held in my uncle's house. They had been attending one of the mega churches in Brisbane, and they were curious about our little group, and they befriended me and my brother. And that was my out, because I started to deconstruct. They had young children like you, Casey. They were little children, and they would sit with us until 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. I'd be asking lots of questions, and I remember, because I was starting for the first time to question my uncle's teachings, I'd be shaking like a leaf, because it's the first time I've ever questioned him. And they would give answers upon answers, and made me think, yeah, this is not right. This is not right. This is not right. Until finally one day, my brother and I were driving back from the Gold Coast, and we said, let's plan an exit for Sunday. Again, nothing was learnt through all the tragedies. His son and his daughter who got killed, nothing was learnt, and they said that if we left the church, then we'd die and go to hell. So I was watching myself very closely. I was watching how I was walking across the road. Would I get struck by a car because Sonia died? Would I be next? And we left. I never went back.
What year was this?
That was around late 1979 to early 1980.
So you make your escape, you leave, you never look back from 1980. I imagine those 4 years leading up to the Doomsday Date are 4 very interesting, exhausting, difficult, confusing years. of deconstructing and understanding what do other churches look like? What do other churches believe in? What do I believe in? What did my
Yes.
uncle make up that is not used in other forms of Pentecostalism or Christianity altogether? And then the doomsday date comes. Are you still thinking at this point that there's a chance your uncle was right?
No.
Okay.
We'd thrown the idea long before we had, because we thought, things were starting to not add up. People were leaving, and he was losing, his mind as well. And once my brother and I left, the church just folded. The adults who were left decided, there's no point in continuing. My uncle's getting worse. His the dementia is sort of setting in. And certainly my brother was not going to take over, because we as young people, I was 21, 22 at that stage, and I really wanted to build a life for myself. And so did my brother.
When you leave, you're not in the grand age of technology in the 80s. So how do you deconstruct? How do you go about learning what you've been through? I don't even know that there would have been terminology, terms, names for things to even explain what you'd experienced at that time.
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. So my way out, on that Sunday, it was like a weight had lifted off my shoulders. But the only thing that I knew what to do was, I still had the mindset. The mindset was still there, even though I was questioning things. It was going to take me years to get to where I am now. But, the only thing I knew to do was to attend an Assemblies of God church and see what that was like. And that's what I did. And I remember the first service that I attended, it was like my mind was reject everything that was said, because I couldn't take it in. Because I'd lived for 22 years of my life with this construct in my head about what true religion, true Christianity was. It was a God of fear and hate, and God was not a God of love. And this is what they were preaching back then.
That other reality, isn't it, that we were talking about? It's wow.
Yeah, it took me a long time to come to that AOG style of thinking. And I stayed in the AOG, and I became, I only then, those years were really good years for me, because I had no identity. I did not know who I was as a person. My whole identity was completely squashed and lost within this really tight-knit, high-demand group. And so I started to find out who I was, that I was a friendly kind of person, that people liked me. And it was 5 years of exploring who I was as a person. And they were the best years, even though I'm no longer in the AOG now, and I don't even agree with with their doctrines. But they were the best years of my life. 5 years of growing up and exploring the world, and getting to know other people and having fun, basically. Having a life as a young person. My teen years were taken away from me, but as a young 20-plus-year-old, I was able to, get it, because we weren't allowed to wear makeup, or I had all these trendy hairstyles and, wearing makeup and expensive clothes. I used to love experimenting with the fashion of the time. In fact, I've still got some of the outfits to this day that I was wearing back in the 80s.
It's really refreshing to hear you speak about a positive experience of moving from one type of church group with destructive practices to a bigger church that is almost like the parent church of the group that you were a part of when you grew up. But it not be like a cult hopping experience. It's it's really familiar to hear people speak about going from one high demand group to another because it feels safe,
Yeah.
it feels familiar.
Yes.
But it's really empowering almost to hear you say that it was some of the best years of your life. It was a safe place for you to deconstruct, to compare what you'd experienced with what other church groups of similar teachings, what their environments look like. So that's really, it's a really nice thing to hear.
Yeah, and interestingly, and this is weird in many ways, but life, what comes around goes around. Life is very interesting, because when my uncle left the AOG those many years ago, we went back into the AOG, and some of those older members knew him from years back.
Oh,
Me deconstruct, because I would sit in some of these pastors' offices and say, you know, what does this mean? He always used to be always talking about crossing the deadline. And I said, he used to preach this all the time, that if you cross the deadline, God would never have you back. And I used to be terrified of that. So I remember sitting in these people who knew my uncle from years ago, helping me deconstruct. And so it's a small world, and so we've come full circle.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
I wonder what their reactions were listening to you talk about what your uncle would teach. But then again, I mean, you could say that about you could say that about, you know, atheists sitting in listening to what the AOG preachers would talk about at their sermon. So I mean, you could just keep going round and round and round with that conversation, I imagine. We've had, as I'm sure you know, Gail, boatloads of conversations about Pentecostalism on this show, where there are very destructive and dangerous groups in existence right now of all shapes and sizes in all parts of the world.
Yeah.
So again, it's refreshing to hear that your experience was not one of those when you moved into an AOG church for those years.
It was the best year. Really, I had to do that. It was the best years of my life. And by the time I was around 26, I was working in a large government organisation, our local electricity company, and I met my husband, who I'm married to, and I was moving on with my life, and eventually moved out of the Assemblies of God. And again, the same thing happened. When I moved out of the Assemblies of God, your whole support structures just disappear, and you're on your own once again. I went through that terrible loss of not having all those friends that I made, and I was part of this really tight-knit group of young people. Not one person reached out to me, and it was overwhelming. And so I went through the loss a second time. So but it didn't stop me, because by then I was working independently. I was planning to get married. When I did finally get married and I had children, I didn't have a strong network of friends. But over the years, through, going to university at the age of 40, I got my social work degree. As I was raising my children, they'd come out to uni with me. My youngest Emma, she would come out with me, and I graduated with honours, and I decided, which was absolutely amazing, and I started building my career as a young mother at the age of 40, because, Emma was born around the age of 37. I built a really strong career for myself. And in 2006, I was invited back to university to do a PhD, which I completed. and became part of a large research project at one of the top universities here in Brisbane. And I'm very proud that I achieved that. It took me a while, but I got there. And went back into practice because that's where I find the most joy. I was almost thinking about researching cults, but I took on a piece of research that was looking at policies and practices that were going on in Queensland within nursing homes for older people. But I think I would have taken a lot more out of researching cults, I think, because it's a real topic of interest for me.
I imagine there's a huge overlap to be looked at in terms of social work, cults and coercive control as well.
Oh, very much so.
Removing children from those dangerous environments, recognizing how and why and when those things can happen. I have a friend who actually told me to start this podcast in the first place. So big shout out to you. She's a social worker. She's a trained and licensed social worker. And she always sends me, when she goes on training, she always sends me different models and things that they're using to identify whether children are being groomed for gangs and stuff. And if you didn't put the title of the actual model itself, then I would assume it was grooming somebody to join a cult. So it's wild how those things really interlink and lap over. So, oh, Gail, you're an absolute inspiration. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I've had a lovely career. I'm pretty well. I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis in February last year. COVID hit, then I got the Takotsubo, and then I developed epilepsy, which is being treated. But they really don't know why those things happen. I think it's a combination of my immune system going crazy on top of 4 vaccines. But I'm well. I'm happy. I now offer counselling to people working for one of the largest EAP counselling agencies in Australia. And I counsel people not only across Australia from all walks of life, professors, to blue-collar workers, academics, professionals, lawyers, and I sometimes provide counselling overseas as well. That's a case-by-case basis, and I get such a lot of joy out of it. And sometimes I get cases where people are caught in cults, and I put my cult hat on and I can, really help them. Which is, I get so much joy from it.
Oh, Gail, you're doing such incredible work. And it's getting me in my soul to hear you talk about studying with young children, because I know that I'm starting the master's degree in September at Salford University for the psychology of coercive control. And I know it's going to be such a tough thing to do. I'll have a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old. And it's going to be like, but it's possible, isn't it? Like, you're sitting here telling me now that it's something that you can do.
If you want it enough. And I've always been one to always keep myself open to what the universe is telling me. And I believe there's power in that. This is what I talk about with my clients when they come to me and they're lost and they don't know where to turn. And you got to listen to your heart and your body. And if your body and you're going along a direction, which has happened to you, which is very inspirational, by the way, and look, the floodgates have opened for you and you're taking this next step. And this is what happened to me. I believe when I look back at my career and see what's happened, and you find the purpose on your life's journey. It doesn't have to be within religion, but if you see the clues along the way, and there's a term for it, and I cannot think of the psychological term at this stage. I listen to a lot of Mel Robbins, and she is absolutely brilliant on Spotify. But it's like this wow moment that hits you, and you say, oh, is that a coincidence? Like, it could be a friend you're thinking of a friend and they ring you at the right time, just in that moment.
Yes. Or you think about, wow, I haven't heard a song by this artist for a long time. And then the next day they're releasing a new album that you didn't know about.
And you need to be open to those opportunities. And that's what happened for me. The doors opened for me once I opened up my heart and mind to something completely different. And it all, I've had an amazing career and I'm still working, and I want to work until I'm about 70, if I can. And, I just get so much joy from talking to people.
Oh, Gail, that's absolutely wonderful. And I imagine it's difficult but fulfilling work when you see yourself in some of the children that you help, in some of the cases that you work on, making a difference in the way that wasn't made for you when you were younger, and being able to have policies now in place where you can recognize that, if there was a child in your position that you were in back in the 60s and 70s, that they wouldn't have to go through what you were forced to go through.
Exactly, indeed. But I do think that I am a strong person, and what won't kill you will make you stronger. And I'm still learning, and I love learning, and I'll continue to do that until the day I die. So you've been such an inspiration to me, Casey, in opening up these opportunities for us to share our stories. It's been such a healing journey, and it's only started since I started listening to your podcast. It's only been in the last year that I'm getting to the point now where I'm not only deconstructing, my belief system, but do I really believe in God or not? Is there a higher being out there? Am I agnostic or not? What's the truth behind the Bible? I'm getting to that point now, and it's still a work in progress.
I think it's a really good example as well, a really strong and real example of deconstruction and healing happening at different times in people's lives, because you left when you were in your early 20s, and only now you're coming to speak publicly about your experience for your own healing, but also for the education of others. So I did have on my question sheet, and I just wanted to end on this question, really, to ask you what advice you would have for others who are looking at their own experiences and thinking about going through those processes.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
A little bit later in life.
Yes. So for me, it was hard, but, there's two groups of people, within cults, those who are born into the cult and those who are recruited into the cult. And for those who are recruited into the cult, I don't blame them for being recruited, because there's lots of questions saying, why the hell did you get yourself recruited and find yourself in that spot? I even look back and ask myself the question, how did I believe it? Why did I believe that? It's just nonsense now. It doesn't make any sense. But I think the thing is, listen to your gut. Even as a child, I would listen to these stories, and I always had in the back of my mind, that doesn't seem right. There was, even as a child, that cognitive dissonance that was going on. But because I was so heavily influenced by this charismatic, powerful personality that took complete control of our family, I was too scared to question. But all I can say is, if you're stuck in a cult, you want to get out, you need to open up the door to reach out for the help. There's becoming more and more help available out there through podcasts like yourself, Like, I was a teenage fundamentalist, and there's a number of American podcasts there. There's a lot of literature coming out, so I think you need to ask those important questions that you might have had even within you as a child. Don't brush them aside. Ask those questions, reach out to someone, get the counselling that you need, and that will be, you'll start your recovery process. And that's what happened to me. Once I found the opportunity and that young couple reached out to me, that was my way out of the cult, because I started to ask those relevant questions. Always keep your mind open. And I think the other thing I would say, be careful being dogmatic, be careful being an absolutist, because if you say this is the absolute truth, then the very fact that you say that means that it is not the truth. Always be open to feeling comfortable within the space of really, I'm not sure. It could be this, or it may not. Sit within that space until you find out more. Don't be absolute in what you feel is right, and don't be dogmatic, but ask the questions.
There was this saying that people used to say in high school when you'd have like your high school boyfriend, and people, well, I say, high school boyfriends, but there were times where you'd have a friendship group, and then people in that friendship group would pair off, and then they'd stop spending time with anybody else because it's new, it's fresh, it's exciting. And young people tend to throw themselves into things with everything. And one of my friends said to me one time, never make a man your whole world, because if that man walks away, then you're left with nothing. And it stuck with me because I just thought it was so spot on, but it was such a funny thing to say because we were like 14, 15. And I guess it's the same with this. If you make something your total belief, if you make something everything that you have, that the minute something fractures that, or the minute something changes within that, you have to come to the realization that maybe everything is gone.
Yes, you lose the foundations and you have to build that up again. But I'm a survivor. I've had a great and really interesting life, and I'm sort of third way through writing my memoirs, because there were some aspects of my life that were funny, that were very interesting, and there's another side of the story to be told. But I've had a very interesting life.
I would love to read that. I would love to read that, Gail. I hope we get the opportunity to tell the listeners that it's out on sale and that people can grab a copy.
I will. And it's been wonderful talking to you, Casey. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really feel
hours of your time.
Oh no, I honestly, I really enjoy it. It's
You're an amazing young woman, and go for that master's. You'll get there. I promise you, you will break it down into manageable chunks. I'm a great believer of that. Don't aim for the sky, just start off gently, and you'll get, tortoise and the hare story. That's how I got across the line.
Thank you so much, Gail, for coming to share your story with us, for telling us about the difficulties of childhood neglect and extremist religion, and the intricacies and difficulties of families, especially when there's manipulation and infidelity and all of the things that come with war times and families creating cults. It's almost like a family cult situation with religion kind of just dumped on top of it, which is a difficult thing to navigate. So I appreciate you coming here to tell us about how you studied with your young kids and went on to do your PhD. And now you are back at work and changing the world one case at a time. I think it's absolutely incredible, very inspirational, and it's brave, and it shows strength to say, yes, I left a group when I was 21, but I'm really only now doing the work on deconstruction. And you
Yes.
said, and this is such an important thing to highlight, Chris Shelton was talking about this on Spotify, on Twitter the other day. He said, it's one thing to walk away from a destructive group, but it's another thing to reject the teachings. And you said that you walked away when you were 21, but you had that mindset for a little while after you left. And there's such a huge difference to highlight. That's where sometimes you find apologists, and that's where sometimes you find people say, oh, well, this was bad, but this was good, or that's not, oh, that harmed me, but it wasn't supposed to be harmful. There's that kind of it's like sinking mud at that point. It's almost like kind of you're really struggling to get out of that really, really heavy, sticky mud. And you just kind of force yourself through it. And then when you're out the other side, you're 3/4 of the way through a memoir, which is absolutely incredible. So I just really appreciate you and your time, Gail. And I know you're going to go back to Troy and Brian from I Was a Teenage Fundamentalist to let them know whether you had a good chat today or not. And I'll be talking to them both in a couple of weeks myself.
Oh, that's so good. I'm sure they're looking forward to talking to you. Oh, definitely, they will be, for sure. So that I'll be listening in when that happens, and I'll continue to listen to your podcast. You've got so many interesting stories, and you're doing great work.
Thank you so much, Gail. I appreciate that. And I know it's the evening where you are, and it's the morning time where I am. So enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will speak to you soon, Gail. Take care.
Thank you. You take care too. Thank you so much. Bye.
That is the end of this week's mini-series. To get in touch with me, you can find me at cultvaultpodcast@gmail.com or follow me on Twitter and Instagram at cultvaultpod. I'm your speaker, Casey, host of the Cult Vault Podcast.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No